The Prime Minister gave a speech outside Downing Street this evening where she made it clear MPs have a stark choice between her withdrawal agreement or the UK walking away from the Brussels bloc without a deal. Earlier today, Mrs. May wrote to Donald Tusk asking to postpone Brexit until June 30 to allow enough time to ratify the unpopular withdrawal agreement. The request will be considered by the remaining 27 EU leaders tomorrow, a European Commission document said. The EU should offer Britain just one extension as multiple delays would leave the bloc in limbo. Theresa May has spoken outside Downing Street. Image Sky News. The Commission is also likely to insist Britain takes part in European elections in May. Mrs. May said it was not in Britain's interests to take part in European elections. In her letter to Mr Tusk, Mrs. May said she will try to get her Brexit deal passed through Parliament in a third vote as soon as possible. She said, "I intend to put forward a motion as soon as possible under Section 13 of the Withdrawal Act 2018 and make the argument for the orderly withdrawal and strong future partnership, the UK economy, its citizens' security and the continent's future demands." Mrs. May admitted Commons Speaker John Bercow's decision to block a third meaningful vote on her Brexit deal, unless fundamentally changed, had made her Brexit plan impossible. She said, the Speaker of the House of Commons said on Monday that in order for a further meaningful vote to be brought back to the House of Commons, the agreement would have to be fundamentally different, not different in terms of wording, but different in terms of substance. Some members of Parliament has interpreted that this means a further change to the deal. This position has made it impossible in practice to call a further vote in advance of the European Council. However, it remains my intention to bring the deal back to the House. Scroll down for live updates. Theresa May's future at number 10 has been thrown into doubt. Image Getty, 10:05 p.m. Update: EU leaders are due to meet tomorrow to discuss Theresa May's request of an Article 50 extension. All of the leaders must agree before a deal can be guaranteed. 8:45 p.m. Update: Theresa May admits her personal regret for the delay to Brexit. Speaking at 10 Downing Street, Mrs. May said, "Nearly 3 years have passed since the public voted to leave the European Union. It was the biggest democratic exercise in our country's history. I came to office on a promise to deliver on that verdict. In March 2017 I triggered the Article 50 process for the UK to exit the EU. And Parliament supported it overwhelmingly. 2 years on, MPs have been unable to agree on how to implement the UK's withdrawal. As a result, we will now not leave on time with a deal on the 29th of March. This delay is a matter of great personal regret for me, and for this I am absolutely sure you, the public, have had enough. You are tired of the infighting. You're tired of the political games and the arcane procedural rows. Tired of MPs talking about nothing else but Brexit when you have real concerns about our children's schools, our National Health Service, knife crime." 7:20 p.m. Piers Morgan has blasted May in latest tweet where he demands the UK leaves the bloc with no deal. The TV host said, "Enough of this Brexit. C******. P. The Prime Minister hasn't got a clue what she's doing. Our MPs haven't got a clue what they're doing either. Let's just be ******. Why leave on March 29th with no deal, and get on with it? We'll survive. Thrive. Anything's better than this." Mrs. May was speaking at Downing Street this evening. Image Getty, 6:52 p.m. Update: Nigel Farage warns he will tear Tories apart if May delays Brexit. The Brexiteer has fired some strong words at Theresa May amid the threat of a delay in Brexit. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, Mr Farage said, "Any extension of Article 50 will be seen as a betrayal of our nation by millions of angry Conservative voters. The choice facing Theresa May is simple. If she holds firm and abides by the law of the land, Britain will leave the European Union at 11 p.m. on the 29th of March. If she buckles, and a long extension ensues, I promise I will do my best to tear her party limb from limb. It deserves no better." 6:28 p.m. Update: Former Attorney General Dominic Grieve warns government's credibility is running out. Speaking of Mrs. May and the Brexit deadlock, Mr. Grieve said, "Unless she stands up and starts doing something different, we are going to spiral down into oblivion." When the Prime Minister came to the dispatch box today at PMQs, I confess I think it was the worst moment I have experienced since I came into the House of Commons. I have never felt more ashamed to be a member of the Conservative Party or to be asked to lend her support. She spent most of her time castigating the House for its misconduct. At no stage did she pause to consider whether is it in fact the way she is leading this government which might be contributing to this situation. 6:08 p.m. Update. France warns Theresa May they will not accept a delay to Brexit unless she offers way out, Emmanuel Macron's spokesman has said. Mrs May must provide clear reasons for an extension. The Prime Minister's request must be approved by all 27 EU member states. 5:41 p.m. Update. Theresa May rejects an invitation to attend meeting of backbench Tory MPs. This comes amid speculation Mrs May is due to make a landmark Brexit statement outside Number 10 tonight. The 1922 committee asked the Prime Minister to address meeting this evening. 5:26 p.m. Update. MPs advised to share taxis home due to fears they could be attacked by angry voters. Deputy Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle said the Sergeant-at-Arms had arranged for black cabs to be available to collect them from the Commons. He also said that police across the country had been put on alert over the threat. MPs now face. 5:15 p.m. Update. UK pensioners living in EU say NHS plans under a no-deal Brexit are sicker. An expat group has criticised a government offer to only cover NHS costs for 1 year. Coordinator at Expat Citizens' Rights, Dave Spokes, said, "How can pensioners with cancer, cardiac problems or other major issues be expected to make or even afford repeated visits to the UK for regular vital treatment? My wife was rushed to hospital in France the first week in February. She is still there 6 weeks later. How could we get her to the UK at a moment's notice if she has a repeat problem? This is a sick, uncaring government to cut citizens adrift through no fault of their own, when they spent their entire working lives paying into the system, and when most had no say in the referendum. Is despicable." Theresa May faced the chamber at PMQs today. Image Getty. 4:14 p.m. Update. Donald Tusk says a delay in Brexit is possible. Mr Tusk said he has had a phone call with Mrs May about the proposals of delaying Article 50, but he made it clear MPs must back the deal. He said a short extension would be possible. Prime Minister May's proposals of June 30 creates a series of questions of legal and political nature. I believe it will be possible for EU leaders to sign off on Strasbourg agreements to supplement divorce deal. I am confident we will not lack this patience and goodwill at this most critical point of the process. 3:58 p.m. Update. The US Senate may block a Brexit trade deal, claiming it will promote other countries leaving the EU. US Congress could block a trade deal with the UK after an EU agreement which could be as late as 2024, a senator has warned. A member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee has warned the UK could wait for 5 years for a trade deal with the US after Brexit, as Donald Trump will struggle to get it passed in the Congress. Democrat Senator Chris Murphy has voiced deep concern from both the Republicans and the Democrats that doing a deal with the UK before the EU would be a gift to Russia, as it would encourage other member states to also leave the bloc. 2:42 p.m. Update. Theresa May sparks quit speculation. Theresa May has hinted she may quit as Prime Minister if Britain does not leave the EU by June 30 after she requested a 3-month Brexit extension. The Prime Minister has sparked speculation she will resign after she stressed several times, "I cannot support extension beyond June 30 during this afternoon's heated Prime Minister's questions. Twitter users took to social media to speculate Mrs May's comments could mean she will resign if forced to have a longer extension. One said, "The way Theresa May is phrasing her arguments, she would have to resign if forced to ask for a long extension in the weeks to come. Are in effect, EU leaders could topple her if they refuse give her a short one now, and she chooses against a no-deal Brexit." EU journalist Dave Keating posted, "Theresa May has finally sent a Letter to the EU requesting an extension until the 30th of June. Letter implies she'd resign rather than consent to a longer extension, but sources say EU27 are very unlikely to agree the 30th of June extension. Commission talking about either end May or end 2019. Theresa May faced a rowdy Prime Minister's questions. Image AFP Getty 1:33 p.m. Update. MPs take to social media to vent the frustration. Some MPs have reacted with frustration on Twitter after the Prime Minister announced she would attempt to extend Article 50 until June 30 and proposed a third meaningful vote on her Brexit deal. Labour former Minister Yvette Cooper said Mrs May was in the worst state of denial. She tweeted, "Truly shocking. This is a Prime Minister in the worst state of denial, refusing to listen to anyone, just still doing the same thing again and again, no plan B, heading stubbornly towards a cliff edge." A former Liberal Democrat leader Tim Farron claimed Parliament is dancing to the tune of extremists rather than listening to ordinary people. He tweeted, "And there's the problem in a nutshell. The PM listens to Brexiteer Tory MP Peter Bone, not Britain. We are dancing to the tune of extremists, not listening to the people." 12.59 Update. EU set to reject May's 3-month Brexit delay. The European Commission opposes extending British membership of the European Union to June 30. In a note on the Brexit process reviewed by the Commission, officials said leaders meeting Theresa May in Brussels tomorrow face a binary choice of a short delay of Brexit from March 29 to before May 23, or a long delay to at least the end of this year, with Britain obliged to take part in Euro elections on May 23. The document said any extension offered to the United Kingdom should either last until the 23rd of May 2019 or should be significantly longer and require European elections. This is the only way of protecting the functioning of the EU institutions and their ability to take decisions. Jeremy Corbyn at PMQs. Image AFP Getty 12:30 p.m. Update. Theresa May says she will bring domestic proposals to tweak deal. Theresa May is ready to tweak her Brexit deal in a bid to secure a third meaningful vote and get it passed through Parliament. The Prime Minister asked the European Council to approve the supplementary documents that President Juncker and I agreed in Strasbourg, putting the government in a position to bring these agreements to the House and confirming the changes to the government's position to Parliament. She said, "I also intend to bring forward further domestic proposals that confirm by previous commitments to protect our internal market." Given the concerns expressed about the backstop, Mrs May will address EU member states to rally them to vote for a 3-month extension during the EU summit tomorrow. 12:25 p.m. Update. Backbench Brexiteer warns May of betrayal. Tory backbencher Peter Bone has warned Theresa May applying for an extension to Article 50 would be a betrayal of the British people. He told the Commons last week 2/3 of MPs voted against any extension to Article 50. Prime Minister, if you consider applying for an extension to Article 50, you will be betraying the British people. If you don't, you will be honouring their instruction. History will judge you on this moment. Mrs May replied, "I've always wanted us to leave on the 29th of March, but I believe it's better to leave with a deal from the EU. We should look again at leaving with a deal. As Prime Minister, I could not consider a delay further than the 30th of June. We need to make a decision what we want this future to be." 12:22 p.m. Update. Theresa May says Speaker John Bercows' decision on third vote makes plan impossible. Theresa May said John Bercows' decision to block a third meaningful vote on her Brexit deal, unless fundamentally changed, had made her Brexit plan impossible. In her letter to European Council President Donald Tusk, the Prime Minister said the Speaker of the House of Commons said on Monday that in order for a further meaningful vote to be brought back to the House of Commons, the agreement would have to be fundamentally different, not different in terms of wording, but different in terms of substance. Some members of Parliament has interpreted that this means a further change to the deal. This position has made it impossible in practice to call a further vote in advance of the European Council. However, it remains my intention to bring the deal back to the House. 12:20 p.m. Update. Corbyn condemns crisis, chaos and division of Brexit in His concluding remarks, Jeremy Corbyn said he had still not seen legally binding changes to the Brexit deal as he accused Mrs May of running down the clock after a second heavy defeat. He said, "Today marks 1,000 days since the referendum and this government has led the country and themselves into crisis, chaos and division. We are still legally due to leave the European Union in 9 days' time. Months of running down the clock and a concerted campaign of blackmail, bullying and bribery has failed to convince the House or the country that her deal is anything but a damaging national failure and should be rejected. They've run out of time. They've run out of ideas. If the Prime Minister cannot get changes to her deal, will she give the people a chance to reject the deal and change the government?" Mrs May replied, "I think he's actually just made the point that I was making in my previous answer to him. That he doesn't actually want to respect the vote that took place in the referendum in 2016. 12:18 p.m. Update. May and Corbyn clash over Brexit. Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn have clashed over Brexit at a raucous Prime Minister's questions. Mrs May said, "There has no idea what he wants on the future of this issue. He asks about long extensions. I'm opposed to that. Setting aside this would mean we would have to hold EU elections. The outcome of a long extension would mean endless days of this House contemplating its navel on Europe and failing to address issues that matter to constituents. This House has indulged itself on Europe for too long. It's time to determine that we will deliver on Brexit for British people. They deserve better." Mr Corbyn replied, "The House has twice rejected her deal. She now has to come up with something different from what she has so far. What will she get to allow this to be done?" 12:12 p.m. Update. Theresa May's letter to Donald Tusk revealed Theresa May has said she will try to get her Brexit deal passed through Parliament in a third vote as soon as possible. The Prime Minister wrote to Donald Tusk asking for a 3-month delay to Brexit until June 30 in order to provide enough time to ratify the deal. The short delay will be decided by the remaining 27 EU leaders when they meet at the summit in Brussels tomorrow. In the letter, Theresa May said, "I intend to put forward a motion as soon as possible under Section 13 of the Withdrawal Act 2018 and make the argument for the orderly withdrawal and strong future partnership, the UK economy, its citizens' security and the continent's future," demands Theresa May's letter to Donald Tusk asking for a Brexit delay. Image PA. 12:12 p.m. Update. Corbyn calls for Brexit talks. WTH May Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has called on Theresa May to meet him for emergency Brexit talks. He told the Commons, "We are now in midst of full-scale national crisis. Parliament has rejected her deal and no deal. She now has no plan. In effort to break deadlock, I have held meetings across the House. Tomorrow I am meeting EU officials in Brussels. Will the PM meet me today to see how we can get out of this crisis?" Mrs May replied, "It's a bit rich inviting me to meet him when he refused to meet me. I'm always happy to meet members from across the House." 12:04 p.m. Update. Prime Minister's questions underway. Theresa May is a dispatch box for Prime Minister's questions. She said taking part in May's EU elections would not be in anyone's interests. She told MPs, 3 years after leaving EU, electing new MEPs is unacceptable and would be a failure. If honouring referendum, the government intends to bring forward proposals for a meaningful vote. If passed, it will give the House time to consider withdrawal bill. If not, House will consider how to proceed. As Prime Minister, I am not prepared to delay Brexit any further than the 30th of June. 11:47 a.m. Update. Tajani pledges to protect citizens' rights. European Parliament President Antonio Tajani said protecting citizens' rights after Brexit was his #1 priority. In a statement on the state of play of Brexit at the European Commission, he said, "For the European Parliament to defend the rights of EU citizens in the UK is the priority, and it is also the priority to protect the rights of British citizens living in the EU. Of course we want a deal, but also without a deal the engagement with the European Parliament will be very strong. Tomorrow, in front of the European Council, I will underline this point because for us this is the priority #1, European Parliament President Antonio Tajani. Image Getty. 11:32 a.m. Update. Donald Trump Jr. in Brexit deadlock attack. Donald Trump Jr. has launched a scathing attack against the Brussels elite over the Brexit deadlock, saying, "Democracy is all but dead." The son of the US president warned the will of the people will be ignored on Brexit Day because the elites control London from Brussels. He called on Prime Minister Theresa May to honour her promise and make sure Britain leaves the EU on March 29. The British People's Independence Day, without delays. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, the US businessman said, "Now, the clock has virtually run out and almost all is lost, exactly as the European elites were hoping." Some pro-Brexit politicians even suggest that Mrs May herself is trying to sabotage Brexit by insisting that Parliament agree to a deal that essentially keeps Britain bound to the EU indefinitely. With the deadline fast approaching, it appears that democracy in the UK is all but dead. 10:50 a.m. Alison McGovern calls for SO24 debate. A Labour MP Alison McGovern has tabled an emergency debate today which would start an attempt to take control of the Brexit extension, removing Theresa May's powers over the length of the delay. The Wirral South MP has filed an application for the emergency Brexit debate with the Speaker's office, and Speaker John Bercow will decide whether to grant the debate later today. A Labour spokesman said, "The Prime Minister should make a statement. If she doesn't, we will support all measures to force a debate in Parliament on this matter." 10:26 a.m. Update. Survey shows low approval rating for EU handling of Brexit. A survey has found fewer than half of Europeans approve of the way the EU is handling Brexit, 38%, economic issues, 40%, and the refugee issue, 23%. The poll, carried out by the Pew Research Centre across 10 EU member states including the UK, found the Hungarian, Greeks and Italians were least satisfied with the handling Britain's departure from the bloc. Only 38% of Europeans think the EU has handled Brexit well. Image Pew Research Centre. 9:33 a.m. Update. Czech Republic ready to support Brexit delay. Czech Prime Minister Andrej Babiš said his country might support a delay to the date of Brexit at the upcoming European Council meeting in Brussels. He said, "We are ready to support postponing Brexit beyond the March 29, but Britain has to indicate specific purpose of such extension and a plan of further actions." 9:57 a.m. Update. Starmer condemns desperate Theresa May. Shadow Brexit Secretary Sir Keir Starmer said the Prime Minister appears to be pursuing a course of action that her own deputy last week described as reckless. Theresa May is desperate once again to impose a binary choice between her deal and no deal, despite Parliament clearly ruling out both of those options last week. What the government should be doing is showing real leadership, making good on their commitment to break the deadlock and secure an extension with a genuine purpose. Brexit timeline. Image Express. CO UK. 8:59 a.m. Update. Leadsom says May frustrated but determined. Commons leader Andrea Leadsom said Theresa May was extremely frustrated but remains determined to take us out of the EU, and hopes to do so without participating in May's EU elections. Appearing on LBC Radio, Mrs. Leadsom said, "It's absolutely essential we're out of the EU before the European elections. It would be extraordinary for the people who voted to leave the EU to find us fielding candidates for these next elections. She's absolutely working her socks off to get to that point, so, in seeking a short extension, she and her cabinet will be determined to get further progress on the meaningful vote so we can get her deal voted through in Parliament." Andrea Leadsom said Theresa May was very frustrated by the Brexit deadlock. Image AFP. Getty. 8:31 a.m. Update. It warns of a wave of problems. A former Tory leader, Ian Duncan Smith, has warned a Brexit delay will create problems for the government and the Conservative Party and can only be justified if Theresa May changes her withdrawal deal. He said, "Any delay creates a bow wave of problems, not just for the government here, but for the governing party around the country. There is only one reason that would pass muster, and that would be because the agreement has to be changed. Any delay must be hinged around the idea of getting change." to the deal, but any other reason simply doesn't work. 8:19 a.m. update, we're in the hands of God, says Juncker. European Commission head Jean-Claude Juncker said the EU had done much to accommodate Britain Brexit but could go no further and warned this week's summit in Brussels may not resolve the issue. Mr Juncker told Germany's Deutschlandfunk radio, there will be no renegotiations, no new negotiations, no additional guarantees in addition to those already given. We have intensively moved towards Britain. There can be no more. Mr Juncker said the EU and the UK would be in the hands of God if there were no deal by the end of March. He said, months set aside for a short Article 50 extension would have to produce, as an end result, an agreement from the British Parliament to the agreement text which is before them. If that doesn't happen, and if Great Britain does not leave at the end of March, then we are, I am sorry to say, in the hands of God, and I think even God sometimes reaches a limit to his patience. Jean-Claude Juncker. Image Getty. 8:10 a.m. update, Minister insists short delay is right option for May. Education Secretary Damian Hinds said a shorter rather than longer extension to Article 50 is the right option for the Prime Minister to request. Speaking on the BBC Today programme, he said, I don't see how a long delay gives certainty. Actually, we've had a long time already, until a deal is finalised there remains the prospect, the risk, of no deal. In terms of timing, there has already been 2+ years to do this, and I think people are a bit tired of waiting for Parliament to get our act together and get the deal passed. Education Secretary Damian Hinds has backed Theresa May's delay request. Image Getty. 7:59 a.m. update. Tories vow to quit. Part of Johnson replaces May as leader. A number of Tory MPs would quit the party if Boris Johnson became leader. Insiders have claimed Theresa May's future has been thrown into doubt after she was forced to ask the EU for a Brexit extension, and Mr Johnson is favourite of Brexit-backing Tory activists, who will pick the leader out of a final 2 candidates. But at least one minister said she would leave the party if the former Foreign Secretary and supporters such as Jacob Rees-Mogg took control of the Conservatives. Another minister said he knew of 5 or 6 Conservatives who were openly saying they were strongly opposed to a Johnson premiership and could not stay in the party run by him, and a group of Brexit ultras, Tory defector Anna Soubry, who quit the party to join the new independent group, said she believed people will leave if Mr Johnson become Prime Minister. Conservative sources said several MPs would quit if Boris Johnson became leader. Image AFP. Getty. 7:30 a.m. update, EU expected to grant Brexit extension but warns of uncertainty. European Parliament Mairead McGuinness MEP said she expects the EU will be willing to grant a Brexit extension if the purpose is clear, but warned there are concerns over continued uncertainty from a rolling cliff edge. She said, we're still waiting to see what the letter from the Prime Minister will contain. The speculation is for a short extension. Michel Barnier yesterday was quite clear in that of course everything will be considered, but in a sense we need to understand what this time period will be used for and what the outcome would be. I think that if that is clarified, I think there should be a willingness to grant an extension, but I think there will be a lot of discussion about it, just as there has been in the European Parliament yesterday, because people are concerned about a rolling cliff edge.